Martin here from Adventure Bikes Company. I have with me the legend, the myth guy, the Tim Whitty, the influencer, but not that kind of influencer you might think of from the social media, the real life adventure riding influencer. We've shared quite a few journeys together, and Tim's got quite a few stories to share, and thank you very much for taking a little bit of time and sharing some stories with me. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, and a beer.
So I'll fire it up straight away with the first question. So what sparked your passion for motorcycles, and how did you evolve into riding across the globe?
I was looking for something different to do for climbing. It's about 15 years ago when I started machine. Before that, I was a climber. That was my main sport for nearly all of my adult life. But as you get older, your performance drops off. So how do you think about that? Do you find some way to find joy even though you're not doing the thing as well? Or do you just do something different? So I did something different. I took up motorcycling, off-road motorcycling.
And how did it start that you started not only riding in New Zealand, but US, Australia, Europe, Canada, I don't know, Antarctica? Have you been to Antarctica on a motorcycle?
I have not. I have not done that. I wanted to, well, anything I do, I like to do reasonably well. And so I threw myself into it because the off-road motorcycling really was exciting for me because it's a great tool for exploring. You can go around the world and meet different people. You can get places very efficiently. It takes me to the mountains, which I know all about, so I'm comfortable with that environment. I like the technicality of it. You can learn, even at my age, you can still get better. So all of those things were great, and it's turned into a wonderful world. I've now got a network of friends all around the world, and it keeps me fit and strong and interested in life, and it's been great. I've loved it.
Absolutely.
I took it seriously. I got some coaching early on. I wanted to be reasonably proficient at it, and I did it a lot.
And then so far, because that you've started that, like, truly committed to it, like 10, 15 years ago? Mm-hmm. Something like that?
About 15 years, yep.
And so far, what was the most unforgettable adventure you've had on the two wheels, and what made it so special?
Well, I think they are my solo adventures where I'm doing something new. So, for example, the Simpson Desert Crossing, which I did, and that little trip I did to the Kaharangi Lighthouse, the top of the South Island, which was where I used the raft for the first time to use my bike across the river.
What's the device? What's the name of the device you invented for that purpose?
Well, I hardly invented it, but I called it the FARC, the float across river.
So we can spell it F-A-R-K.
F-A-R-K.
Yeah.
The FARC. And if you're carrying the FARC on your bike, then it's the FARC-kit. And all it is just a little light air mattress bought from the warehouse for $18.
Wow.
For a twin. Yep.
So the most unforgettable ones were the one when you shared when you literally push yourself motorbike in a limit, in an environment which can be seen as unfriendly and etc. Like the water, desert, loads of sand, heat, cold, and...
Yeah, but I'm comfortable in those environments because of my background, really. So it's not so much that, it's really the putting together of elements. I love new stuff. I like exploring. I love things when they're a wee bit funky, and trying to find solutions where one didn't exist before. Like, for example, the raft kit. Shall I tell you about that?
Yep.
So Josh Martin of Adventure Guide wrote about this trip to the Kaharangi Lighthouse, and it sounded awesome.
That's on the North Island?
On the South Island.
South Island?
The top of the South Island on the west coast. But to get there, you have to cross these two big rivers. And they can only be crossed at low tide. And not only just a low tide, but a super low tide. And there's two of them, so by the time you get over one, you get to the other one, and then you go on the other side of that. By the time you come back, the tide is going up again. So I thought, how can you reduce your reliance upon being able to do it just for that time? And I thought, well, I've done a bit of river rafting in the past. That's another thing that I do. So I thought, well, why don't you just take a little raft and raft your bike across? So I did that.
And it wasn't entirely the raft. It was actually a mattress from
It's a little blow-up air mattress.
two person.
One person, no, one
One
person.
person.
One person, just a little single air
Do not
mattress.
try this at home. This guy's a professional.
And I didn't know whether it would work, but I suspect it would have. And you know, and I wanted, and I did it myself because I didn't want to involve anybody else really in my experiment. I didn't want somebody else to drown their $15,000 machine. So, you know, just went and did it myself. And I love the solo stuff. I mentioned that just before because everything's more intense. You know, like you're just a bit more out there. You've got to rely on yourself more, and it's more intense. So the memories are greater. You asked me what were the most memorable. It's those moments there where things are up and you're just in the flow and it's just you and everything else, but you're having to operate across multiple skill sets.
And just tell us a little bit about that desert crossing as well, because that for some people might feel like you just went and ridden amongst Tuaregs, you know, when they were taking the camels and, you know, and you spent 2 weeks crossing, you know, Sahara Desert. So Simpson Desert is in Australia.
It's right on the very middle of the red centre of Australia. And the Simpson Desert is actually the biggest parallel dune desert in the world.
Whoa.
If you have a look at it on Google Earth, for example, it just looks like corrugated iron,
Wow.
with the dunes perpendicular to the prevailing wind.
And what was the most difficult part of it? Was it the sand, the heat, the lack of water, the distance, the fuel?
Well, the distance mostly, because just the simplicity of the idea appealed to me, where it's 500 k's from one petrol, you know, from Mount Dare Station to Birdsville on the other side, and there's nothing in between except 1,000 sand dunes, and nothing.
And navigating through those sand dunes, is there like a road you can just follow, like four-wheel
Yes,
drive?
there's a four-wheel drive track, and actually it's reasonably commonly done during the season. Most people would take 3 or 4 days to do it.
And you've done it in?
Well, the idea was I wanted to do it all in one push in a day.
And did you achieve it?
Yes.
How many hours?
I was about 12 hours out roughly.
And how many kilometers is that?
It's 500 k's.
In the desert, in a heat?
Yeah, in the heat and 12 hours, and you've got to carry water, you've got to carry gas, and...
Did you have your like sleeping gear, emergency pack or something like that?
I didn't no, I just stripped everything back. I had enough to survive if I stuffed up.
Through the night, yeah.
But, yeah, I had a plastic survival bag. You could
Plastic survival bag.
crawl into or turn into a shade cloth or something if you needed it while you laid there with your broken leg waiting for somebody to turn up.
What do you carry as an emergency kit? A plastic survival bag.
Well, you don't need much more.
No, because if you got ingenuity, you know, you can use the motorcycle, you can use the fluids you have, you can use many things, you know. That just
Yeah, I had enough water
your
to survive.
Your definition of adventure is probably completely different than the standard Google definition of adventure. But yeah,
well, actually, it's interesting. Like after my climbing experience, my view on things like that is that my key thoughts are: am I going to die or be seriously injured? And if the answer to that is, well, no, not really, then you might as well give it a go. And with something like the desert, are you going to die? Well, probably not really, because there'll be somebody in 2 or 3 or 4 days, if you can survive that long. And so and you've got your InReach, so
which is a GPS satellite phone.
So you've got your, unless you have a big crash or something, but you've got your butt covered. You've got the ultimate case pretty much covered, so you might as well give it a lash. And so everything that I do these days seems sort of relatively non-serious compared with climbing up mountains, which is desperately dangerous.
During your time, because you've ridden, probably all the organized rides in New Zealand and loads of in Australia and in States and etc. You've ridden with some well-known figures in adventure and motorcycle world. Can you share a standout moment or lesson from those experiences?
Well, I've been in their company. I haven't really ridden much with them, but I've ridden a bit with Birchie, because he's a Kiwi, and he's very well known, and he turns up at all these rallies. And three friends and I, we hired him for 3 days once. We went up to his place. He put us on 250 bikes, and we just followed him around for 3 days riding, and he coached us and everything else, and that was blooming wonderful. So I know Birchie reasonably well. But another guy that was very influential in my early days was an American, GPS Kevin.
GPS Kevin.
Who's not a great rider, but he's a great facilitator of riding. And he's an older guy, he's over 60, and he runs really cheap adventure tours in the States. And when I first started riding, seriously, I found him and I thought, wow, that's great. And so I signed up on a couple of his tours. I've now done about half a dozen and met a whole lot of guys over there who have become friends now. So that's all part of building the network.
Wow.
So that was awesome. And I've seen a lot of the States, and these guys come back to New Zealand and I go over there
So
and
was
we ride
he here,
together.
GPS Kevin, was he here in New Zealand riding?
He hasn't been here yet. His son's been here.
Oh, wow.
He stayed with us. I lent him a 690. He went for a ride around the South Island. But GPS Kevin himself hasn't been over.
So would you, from your experience with Birchie, for example, would you recommend that riding with someone who actually can assess your skills and make the improvement as you go? It's a valuable thing for adventure riding?
Oh, I think that's critical. You know, what Birchie is really, really good at is helping you learn how to ride your adventure bike like a dirt bike. And so the more skills you have, the more you can do, the more adventures you can have. You can push that envelope out a bit and do stuff, get around stuff. That's why I like small bikes rather than big bikes too, because I'm much more likely to be able to get up stuff. So I can push things a bit harder.
And that's your main principle too, getting up stuff.
I like getting up stuff.
And during your time, obviously, because you did some trail rides, rallies, you know, overseas adventures, you set up the goals and you achieved them.
Yeah.
Did you I know that you come across few mechanical issues with the bike, but the most famous one, which I always blew my mind, is your KTM 500 story.
Yes.
If you can tell us the story of not completely replacing the oil on your KTM 500, how did it hold up, and what did you learn from that experience?
Okay, so oil change time for the 500, dump all the oil, take out the filter, put a new filter in, and then I got distracted. Phone went, or something, I can't remember. But anyway, no oil went back into the bike, and started to ride it.
So
and
you only put no oil? Or
no,
just
no oil. No, I drained all the oil out.
And then including filter and everything?
Took the filter out, put a new filter in.
Did you soak the filter in oil?
No.
No. Was it dry
I don't
filter?
normally do that, no. Yeah, it was a dry filter. Put it all back together again and got distracted, and no oil went back into the motor at all. So, and then I rode it. And because the KTM, that 500, never used any oil anyway, I didn't bother checking it. And my son and my son were riding it on rides. And to cut a long story short, it went for 14 engine hours, 14.3.
With no oil, completely no oil.
Well, just the little residual oil, which is before it stopped. And when it stopped, you know, like one of the valve rockers welded itself to its pin. The top end got a wee bit hot, so that the valve didn't open. My son was riding it, and it just stopped. Dad, the bike doesn't go. So took it back on the trailer, and when we dumped, you know, at the very, very end, I took it to the mechanic, and he got about 2 tablespoons of oil out, max. So I'd been running on something like that for about 14 hours. What's the lesson?
Yep. Double check the oil?
Well, obviously that, but no, I mean, how robust is that motor? They can operate with so little. It's incredible.
Yeah, this
It's
story,
just incredible.
I've heard from Aaron, who did around the world
Yes,
trip
yeah.
on the 500, on quite a few people around here, that the 500 can take some serious beating, and
Yeah.
and it is short intervals. But
Yes.
it's 1.2, 1.3 liter of oil.
1.2, yeah.
Or in your case, 2 tablespoons of oil lasts for 14 hours.
It's incredible, really. And the mechanic, you know, we were having a look at it, and he had the top off, and he waggled the connecting rod, the con rod. He said, "I think we might get away with this." So we didn't do the bottom end; we just did the top end, all the valves and everything else. Put it back together. I no longer own that bike. I sold that to a friend with complete knowledge.
With oil or with no oil?
with oil. And he also knew the complete story, so he knew what he was buying. But he still owns that bike, and that bike has now done another 500 hours on that same bottom end.
Wow.
Incredible.
It just tells you that the 500 is really built
It's
for tough stuff, and
It's a great platform, yeah. It's tough.
wow.
It's a great bike, great motor.
That's just incredible.
Also, and another lesson is that you don't need to be too anal about whether your oil is right in the middle of the sight glass, or maybe you're at 35 hours and not 25 before you change it.
Yeah, yeah. Like probably, I reckon you still got 500, another one.
Oh yeah,
And
that's my
then-
favorite
yeah.
bike.
And why would you say it's your favorite? Why comparing to 300 which you have and 690?
Yeah,
Why did 500 sits you so well with everything?
because you can do everything on it, and anything off road is fun. And I find my joy off road. I like excelling off road, and so I set up the bike and I choose a bike so that off road it just really works, and I love it. I love that bike. It just does everything really.
Over the years, you've picked up many tips and tricks. And what's one of the hacks every adventure rider should know?
Oh, well, I think you just need to know your bike well enough to know that any of the common scenarios that you can handle. You get a flat, you drown your bike. Those are the main ones, really. You need to be able to deal with that, preferably by yourself. So you need to carry enough tools and have enough knowledge to be able to do that. Really, that's the terms of hack.
And then tools-wise, it's always I always come across with the people who have tremendous experience like yourself, that they mainly try to work, even if they're at home, from the tools that they have.
Yeah, you need
with
to
them.
know that you can do almost anything with the tools you got.
And then if they come across, changing spark plug, changing bits and bobs on a bike which are broken and etc., they can I can work it out with this tool and that tool,
Yeah.
join them together, get the
Yeah.
bearings out, and
You need to be able to do any of that.
and etc. So that's pretty handy tip with
Getting bearings out. I haven't done that one with my years. I know I can use a rock as a hammer machine. I need to figure out whether I can use it as a drift. Maybe a little bit of fence post.
Yeah. There is tremendous amount of ingenuity here to learn. And when you went on your travels and on your adventures, have you ever had an adventure that didn't go as planned? And how did you handle the situation? And what that taught you actually?
Well, whenever I go away, I mean, whenever you're in a situation, you've always, in the back of your mind, got a plan B and a plan C. Constantly thinking, if can't do this, what's going to happen? Or if we break here, what's going to happen? I'm sort of constantly scanning the range of what might happen, and to know what to do if to cope. So, if that's the case, you very rarely get caught out. I mean, you just don't put yourself in a situation really which becomes that serious if you haven't got a plan to deal with it. So I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
But did you had actually a situation when you said it like, for example, you're going through the desert and no, you didn't made it, something's happened, you dealt with it, and then you carry on. Did you had any of the situations like that things didn't go to the plan?
You always have little mechanicals or anything like that.
What would be the one like really stands out in your memory that you said like, oh, okay, that could have been played differently?
Oh, I don't know. The thing that comes to mind as you're talking really is I knocked myself out slightly on the Simpson Desert. Just dazed myself for half an hour or so. So I got away with that.
So did you went over like the dunes and lost the...
I was just going along in the sand, and I looked down at my instruments to see, how far I've come, what's the next stop, and looked up, and there's a big bank in front of me. Just a big sort of sandy concretion. The track dived off, and I looked up and got that. So, and I just hit it, went for a tumble, and ended up sort of dazed. So I woke up on the ground, the bike was on top of me, I pushed that off and thought,
just what's happening?
where am I? And then I figured out, I'm in the Simpson Desert. Okay, which way am I supposed to go here? Do I go this way or do I go that way? So after about 10 minutes, I came right. So thankfully.
Yeah, well, that's good, and that's also teach you how tough you are. You think that you're like a glass, but then you take a few tumbles on those bikes, and suddenly like it's actually not that.
Yeah.
And also protection you're wearing, is
I never go anywhere without my armour on.
Yeah, that's a good lesson.
Even riding across town, I would put on a decent pair of boots and
100%.
my armour.
And since you started riding, adventure across multiple continents and countries and etc., how has adventure riding changed since you started? And what advice would you give to the younger riders who are just starting out now?
Well, I've only been doing this for 15 years, so
So just started.
well, well, you're relatively speaking. So 15 years, there hasn't been enormous leaps and bounds in technology, for example. So I mean, I can't speak to what happened years and years and years ago.
What was the first bike you've started?
Oh well, I sort of have had bikes right through. Like when I was a student, I had had a Honda 350. So I've had about 30 bikes now, roughly. I think about 30 of various types. But never big bikes. Always had a trail bike in the sort of the garage, but never really did any riding. It was only about 15 years ago where I started. I'm going to take this seriously. So I started to get good machines, and away we went on that. Lessons, I don't know. Get coaching. If somebody's starting out, learning how to ride, and getting coaching so that you don't embed bad habits. Like you see people who nickel and dime this sort of thing, and they say, I'm either good enough or whatever, and you see them riding, and they're really have got skills which limit them, and they're embedded. They've kept on going, They really would be better just to back right out of that sucker and learn all over again. Go to somebody like Birchie, and just get set up from your basic body position onwards. Everything comes from that. So, coaching, get good coaching.
100% agree. When people always ask me what's the best improvement to the bike, I bought this, I bought that, that brand, that model. I always tell them get your riding right.
Oh yeah, get your riding right. And it's far easier to pick up skills on a light bike. Like you'd be better if you wanted to get seriously into adventure riding to get a little dirt bike and just go out and learn how to ride that sucker.
It just forgives you much more than the big bike.
The rate of learning is so much faster. Yeah. You can try things without the consequence of a big bike. It's not expensive. It's not as expensive. It doesn't hurt as much. And you can try lines which you otherwise wouldn't be able to do on a big bike. So you can learn all of that on a small bike, but really, really quickly, and then transport a lot of that to your big bike if that's what you want to do. But do you need a really big bike anyway? Aaron's ridden around the world on a 500.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it with the proper mindset and the skills. You can do it with most of the bikes, basically.
Yeah, courses for courses, really.
Yeah.
Like I did that big ride to the Arctic Ocean. That was on a friend's GS 1200, a GSA. That was the right tool for the job because we were doing 800 k's a day, mostly on the road.
Did you hit the monkey butt after that?
Yeah, it was a wee bit sore. Yeah.
800 kilometers a day. That's a pretty decent amount of kilometers.
It is, but I mean, when you're riding a dirt bike, you're often standing anyway. You know what I mean? And so that's a technique which you can just use if you start to get a bit sore in the butt. You can just stand up. I hardly ever have a butt problem, a sore butt problem, because you're up and down.
Because you're always off-road. You don't
a lot of the time.
They only see you in a town when you're crossing the junction and the traffic lights, and then you're off-road.
Yeah, I prefer off-road.
Yeah. And so you have accomplished so much on the two wheels. So in the 15 years, where people don't achieve in their whole lifetime, riding on the bikes. For at least the people I know, for example.
Well, only because I ride so much.
So what's left on your adventure bucket list now? I know your adventure bucket list is always full. Even if something will tip over, you just always add it to keep it full. So what's left?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm got myself sort of booked up for the next 12 months or so, really. But
you're in the band.
Well, there's trip opportunities which come up, and you sort of go, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
How do you find those opportunities? Through people, through
they
newspaper?
just come up. Like you mentioned about bucket list. I don't really have a bucket list. I mean, some things, yeah. Like there's some little parts of pockets of New Zealand I don't know. I'd like to go in and sort of fill in those gaps. But in terms of a bucket list, I want to ride this or do this big overseas trip. Not really motivated by that so much. I'm more of an opportunist. So I just got my antenna out for things which inspire me. I'm looking for an idea which inspires me, and onto that idea, then you can start bolting on the logistics, and they turn that idea into a mission, and that's what I love. And then you get your raft and go to Kahurangi because you've got this idea and you're inspired by it, or you think there's Simpson Desert, I could ride that in a day. Oh, fuck, what do I need to do to that? And you start doing all of that. So, and that's when you really have a really big, great trip.
So for
'cause
you,
it's an adventure.
basically, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
it's not really a destination that much. It's just the journey. If you can see the potential in the journey to being like very adventurous, you're like, yeah, that sounds good. You know, the idea
Yes.
is fulfilling, and then the journey is going to be interesting because if it's a desert, I'm going to need this setup, and that's where the processing in your brain starts. You know, like preparing for a climbing. It's not really like probably the same as the climbing because you can imagine the summit of the peak.
Yes.
What is the journey that you have to pass the glacier, that you have to do
Yeah, you got to
rock
choose your
climbing,
route.
when you have to choose the route, you have to make multiple decisions.
Yes.
And then the most fulfilling part is just
Yes.
passing the journey. It's
Yes.
not really the...
I love that multiplicity of stuff which is happening, which you have to patch together using skills, not just your riding skill, but this and this and this. And all together, you've got this grand adventure which you're putting together and then carrying out. I love that aspect of it.
And in a brief description, so the next 12 months, briefly, what do you have cooking? Where are you going?
Oh, well, it's rally season in New Zealand. I've got 2 New Zealand rallies coming up, 2 events. Then I take my son and my son-in-law in their mid-30s to the Simpson Desert. I'm going to get, they've started to learn to ride, and so I wanted a carrot which would get them on a bike, you know, big enough. So I offered to take them on that trip and they said yes. So that's great. And so we'll do that. I'll take them on an easy route, not the desperately hard one. It's just 'cause I want them to have a good time. What after that? I go to the Balkans with you, but before that, I've got a rock climbing trip with Wendy, my wife, to Slovenia. So we'll do that, and then I come back.
Just to
Yes.
clarify, you don't carry your bike like climbing,
I do
on a
not.
belaying or
No,
something
I
like
do
that.
not. I do not.
Just
No.
want to
Yep,
make sure.
yep. Then I'll probably go to the States because I ride in the States most years. I've got a bike and a van over there, so I'll probably go there for six weeks. Do some stuff there with some friends.
Which area of states? Utah or Arizona? Or
I've done a lot of riding in Colorado and Utah. I love that area, but my gear at the moment is over with a friend in North Carolina, over in the southeast, and I haven't done much riding in there. So I might do a little bit of riding up in that area this time around.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
And after that, season starts in New Zealand again.
Yeah. Then there's another climbing trip with Wendy too. So I still do a little bit of climbing, but mostly because Wendy does. You know, she climbs twice a week, so she's still into it. So I turn up.
So,
Double with that.
did you ever count how many days you're spending on a motorcycle a year?
Probably about 100-ish,
Wow.
I suppose.
If there is someone to look up to, you're definitely in that line, you know? Like for most adventure riders I know. And 100 days is a very, very good number.
Well, I started to feel about 15 years ago, I started to feel my mortality. I was really enjoying riding. And to ride 100 days, I mean, you've got to be able to do that, you know. How are most people going to find the time? Well, I'm retired. But I retired slightly early.
No,
motivated in part.
On your Facebook says that
Yes.
you're fully employed in doing nothing.
Or something.
Something like that.
Working at not working.
Working at
Working
a
at
work
not
or
working.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I retired deliberately a little bit early because I was feeling my mortality. I really enjoyed adventure riding, and I wanted to be able to keep doing it at a good level. How many more years have I got to be able to ride at a good level? I thought maybe I've got, and I'm starting to think of these thoughts about just before 60. Now I'm 70. I thought maybe 8 years. So I've had my 8 years and still going strong. And I'm still learning, which is what the sport can deliver, really. I'm still loving
Do you
learning.
think
Still feel
it's a
like
secret
I can
recipe
learn,
to just, you know,
get efficient.
be fit and everything? Because, you know, watching you and then trying to keep up, it's still, you know, a great fun for us. You know, just following you. I always tell people who are new to riding with us that, like, when they ask for a pee break, I'm like, if you can overtake them, you can stop for a pee. But you better take a diaper.
Well, you can do some things. It's part of that learning. You know, like during COVID, we couldn't go overseas, so I had to keep busy. You know, so I found a 32-kilometre section of riverbed, and I set that up as my time trial thing. So I wanted to see how much I could get it down, you know. I was able to do it in about sort of 43 minutes when I started. I thought, I wonder how fast can you do this sucker? Just slowly whittled the time, whittled it down.
Was that the riverbed we went recently?
No,
No,
it wasn't that. It was the Air River in North Canterbury here.
And what's the best time you clicked over there?
I've got it down to 29:12. But then I stopped because
a
I was starting to get
feeling
to the
like
stage.
Birchie. Just
No,
wheeling,
I was getting-
wheeling through the rocks.
At that, I tried to keep the front wheel on the ground actually most of the time. No, but that was a great little project. You know, how can you do it? Eventually I ran out of, I didn't want to go any faster than I was going because it was starting to feel a bit dangerous. So I wanted to get more effective, more efficient. So I started to sign the course. I had little green and orange flags at the decision points for the routes. You know, you got a route option, you got a track option that way or that way. Which way do you go? When you're approaching it at 80 kilometres an hour, which way do you go? So I flagged it, and then worked out the most efficient way, and that enabled me to take another couple of minutes off to get under the 30 minutes because you set yourself little goals. You know, okay, I can do 40 minutes now 35 minutes. Now I've got to 32 kilometres. Now I've got to, if I average 60 kilometres an hour, I can do it in 32 minutes. I've got to average 60. So that becomes the goal, and you knock that one off. Then the next goal is 30 minutes. Can I get it under 30 minutes? So,
did you ever race motorcycles in the past, like
No.
between and etc.?
No, and I don't like racing. Not in that sense. Because I think, for me, really, I don't think I'm particularly talented. And being amongst other guys who have got prepared to go harder than me or take bigger risks than me, whenever I try to show off, for example, I always fall off. So I really don't like racing too much.
You like to ride in your own ride,
I
with
like
your
to
own
ride
flow.
my own ride and set my own little goals, and that inspires me enough to, try hard. But why I brought that whole thing up was that project made me very comfortable on the 500, at speed, in loose surfaces, and very efficient very efficient in terms of my stance, being able to rest.
Like you're programming your body.
Programming my body, learning how to micro rest, up on the pegs, down. Now we can back off just a little bit and find a rest position and that. So that whole project, and that's one thing that somebody who's learning this sort of stuff can do. You can do stuff like that. That turns you into just a much better rider all round.
Absolutely, and I think what I would say what I took it off from that conversation with you.
Yep.
This is great advice to just set it up in your own environment,
Yes.
the timing zone, so you can
Yes.
slowly just step by step pushing and make those adjustments and everything.
Yes.
The things about the tools and working on your bike all the time, I think it's a crucial part as well.
Yep.
And the third would be ride your own ride with your own flow, because loads of people get
Sucked in.
with
Yeah.
with the groups.
Yeah.
And they just makes mistakes and just breaks their own days,
Yeah.
riding and everything. But if you ride your own ride with your own flow,
Yeah.
you're more efficient, you're less tired, you do more miles, you have way more fun, and this is why we do it, for
Yes.
fun,
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
to just
Yes.
have that.
That's right.
So this
You
is
need to ride your own ride.
that's some great advices over there. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for
Pleasure.
having a time and to share some advices and some stories with us. And I hope I'm looking forward to our next ride. I'm always looking forward to ride with you, and the boys. And I think we've got some good adventures planned.
Yeah. Me too. Thank you.
Cheers on that.
Cheers. Here's to the wheels turning.